Anyway, so I'm ferreting her around.
Putting it all.
She's taking care of her. Yeah. So I bring her to the bed sheet.
How are you? Good.
All before the meeting.
You have room to sneak by?
Oh, sweet, thank you. Give Allison 30 seconds. Hey!
Happy New Year.
Yeah, you too. Good on. How are you? It's pretty sparse.
UBCM was in September. Seems like so long. Seems like in some ways.
And this is
it's
both
a year.
you're giving you guys
Yeah, I'm-
update and I'll give you feedback on it.
It's all good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Free childcare development. You look at those trees, they're having a good time. They're running up there.
He said maybe a later date, Sean.
I know that's right.
Is she out there yet?
Allison, is that you out there? Yeah, thank you.
Astonishing.
All right, we'll call this meeting to order, the committee of the whole. Thank you all for coming, members of the public, and we're very gifted today to have our MLA here, Jordan Sturdy, and his trustee sidekick, Sharon Thompson, who also has been elected to the West Van Council, which we congratulate him for. Now, there's not much of an agenda here. We thought it would be more of just an open back and forth. We will leave public comments till sort of towards the end, if you don't mind. Thank you. So we have the approval of the agenda. Thank you.
Did you want to add public comments at the end? 'Cause right now, there's nothing on there that says that the public can speak, so it just might make it clear for everybody that there was that
I was just
opportunity.
gonna open it up at the end if we got some
Depending
time.
on the time, I think.
Yeah, depending on the time. too.
Okay, well, I'd like to add public comments as number 4.
Perfect, let's put it on
Okay.
there, number 4, public comments.
Just
You
to
mean
be.
after adjournment?
Three
That's at the pub.
Yeah, because don't forget, during this
So
one,
we'll
down
change
here
that
with
to
the general
3,
public,
yeah.
the pub afterwards.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
Just for the
it's
people
not-
that are here. So can I have approval of the agenda, please? Thank you, first, second, all in favor, thank you. Okay, council update to MLA Jordan Sturdy, West Vancouver, Sea to Sky. The first one on the agenda is the major capital projects.
You didn't want to let Jordan say anything at the beginning?
No, he's just gonna sort of feed in as required.
If I might,
Yeah.
just to say, I'd like to congratulate everybody. You know, it was a very interesting election. Don't tell me that every vote doesn't count.
Oh, yeah, don't tell me.
I'm sure that has been said before. I was not a unique comment, I'm positive, but I think it looks like you have a great group, and I have been traveling around to meet with all of the new councils in my region, just to get a sense of what, as council begins to develop a vision for themselves and for each new council, what you'd like to try and accomplish over the next couple of years, and what I can do on your behalf to help you further your ambitions. And really, that's why I'm here more than anything else. I'll certainly provide feedback, provide comment, provide advice where I can, but ultimately, I'm really more interested in hearing what you want me to try and accomplish. So I look forward to this, and thank you for the invitation.
Well, thank you, Jordan. And further to that, I think we have our phase 2 of our strat plan coming up at the end of the week, and that's gonna sort of formalize where our plans are for the next, well, year and beyond, 4 years. But I think what we'll do is we'll just go through these different areas here, and after each section, maybe you can just comment on them, or we'll just ask you, if we're going in the right direction, or for any clarification we might need. So the first one on the major capital projects, and these are residual from the last council, obviously, especially the community center now. The community center has been rolling along. We're in the fundraising stage, as everybody knows. I haven't got a big presentation on. Do you want to speak to it, Shauna? You don't have to.
I could, I'd be glad.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sure.
I think first of all is introducing Shauna to Jordan.
Oh,
You guys had a long
you guys
phone
met?
call, I understand,
Oh,
and
good.
Shauna was very appreciative of the time you took to talk.
Shauna
about the
Jennings,
project.
So
Chair of the,
Community Center project
Fundraising.
is, as Gary said, in fundraising stages. We have a 85% working drawings and a building permit in hand for the facility. We are submitting a grant application, as we discussed, for January 23rd, 2019, and will be for the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Grant. Do you have any specific questions about the, I know we chatted about it.
Yeah, sort of the overall cost, the overall budget, what it looks like,
The
and
overall-
the ask.
The
just
overall
remind
budget
me.
is 14.5 million, and the overall ask from the grant will be 7.3 million.
yeah, of course, it's coming under the infrastructure,
Yeah.
program.
Any comments? And this was the federal program that the province is administering, right?
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And then my recollection was that it was it 120 million for British Columbia?
I think it was 134 million,
Yeah.
for British Columbia.
Yeah, and that's what I think we talked about, that was my only concern, just with regard to the application and the ask, and seeing whether there was ways of, there's a risk of not asking for enough, but there's also a risk of asking for too much. And, recognizing that we have sub 200 municipalities in British Columbia, give or take, all of them are gonna put in a request. And if everybody asks for 7.3 million, we're way oversubscribed, so just, I know in the Steep Sky, I'm anticipating that there'll be an application from Squamish.
Okay.
And I know that Lions Bay has some aspirations as well. I think Whistler and Pemberton are certainly from a rec side anyway, are not likely to put forward something that I'm aware of anyway. So that's sort of the competition here in the region.
Squamish is looking for the rec community.
Yeah, they have a very, very old infrastructure and a significant population. They've got a pool and a rink that are both on their last legs.
Right.
It's fair to say, and really don't have a community center either.
Yeah, kind of, that's.
Yeah, I get it.
I know.
I get it. Yeah, so that would just be my only caveat, his only concern is that, and that's always a tricky one to figure out what's the right number.
Right, in terms of asking.
Yeah.
And Lions Bay, what do you think that?
Well, I don't, I'm not really at the liberty to sort of share the whole meeting, but I had a discussion or a meeting with Lions Bay yesterday, and they have a very, very significant infrastructure deficit. So it's not necessarily recreation,
Okay,
although there is some recreation component to it,
yeah,
but just overall, there's a significant infrastructure deficit, so. This fund will be, it's not, my recollection was it's not just for recreation.
No.
this stream,
Yeah.
my understanding is the stream is culture, recreation, and community
And, yeah,
infrastructure.
that's a pretty broad
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
envelope,
Don't think it goes to water and sewer, those are the other
No.
streams.
Not to-
yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll just continue our fundraising on that.
Well,
and we'll see how it goes.
absolutely.
The timeline, we're finding that the timeline was extremely short, for the kind of money that we're.
Which is great that
having to
you're
raise.
at the place you are right now, in
Yeah.
terms of having your plans, having something
Preparation.
that you can provide in terms of an application, so that'll provide an advantage in some respects. Yeah.
So the other question that keeps coming up is, are they thinking about dishing out the whole fund in this first round?
It's not that much money, so I'd be surprised if it all didn't go out.
Okay.
And I think it's also worth noting that we really haven't had, my recollection anyway, we haven't had an infrastructure intake for recreation specifically in an awfully long time. In fact, I think here in Pemberton, we received some money for our community center. I think we got $1.1 million back in 2008, so 10 years ago, which I think was probably
That's the last one.
about the last call, so there'll be quite a bit of pent up demand.
Yeah, and probably not see another one for, of this size for a while.
Well, we'll see what, I think it
Election.
often the applications are informative. So,
Yeah.
you know, you get a, you know, $1 billion worth of applications and it tells
Yeah.
you that
There's a need, huge need out there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So there used to be a stream and a gas tax fund that Pemberton got that we couldn't apply for because we were in. And I think a lot of communities applied for that, which isn't there anymore.
Not sure, which one was that?
Oh, I think it was a strategic priorities fund.
Hmm.
Now they just got the community works fund or one or the other. But,
Anyway, I think we're gonna have to be ready for this on January 23rd. It doesn't look like they're gonna push that back at all, and we'll just, let the, oh, sorry.
Would you like to see a copy of the application when it's ready to go?
Oh,
Yeah, it's always great if if our office gets CC'd on your applications, and then we can follow them through the process and ask about them. If we don't know the application's there, it's pretty hard to, you know,
No, absolutely.
support it.
Thanks, Maureen.
Sure.
I believe that was the intent.
Yeah,
To go around.
and I would say that's generally true, whether it be an application, like a grant application, or some other initiative that you want to try and advance for the community. Let your MLA know.
Yeah, the next one is the Cope Bay Water Treatment Plant, which is a long time coming. We've just sort of finalized the huge subdivision project out there by Grafton Lake, and part of that approval was that we got land for this sewer plant. We've done a test on this, sorry, the water plant, and we've done a test on the ceramic filters and that sort of thing, so we're gonna be going ahead with that. But that again is another huge capital project that we have funding for, some funding.
Yes.
Yeah, to a certain extent. And the other big capital project, of course, the Fire Hall and Emergency Operations Center, which,
If you might,
Yeah.
in terms of the water treatment plant,
Yes.
what's the capital cost on that?
it's about 10, isn't it?
7,
Oh, is it?
6.8.
6.8.
Oh, is it?
6.8.
Trust the finance guy.
Yeah, sorry.
I know where you are.
Yeah.
So it's one third,
In terms of-
two-thirds through grants.
Yeah.
Provincial and federal, and 1/3 by the municipality.
1/3, 2/3, okay.
yeah, it's the old program.
And we hope to be up and running summer 2020.
Which will be very nice for all the people that get water, it's been long overdue. The Fire Hall and Emergency Operations Center, and that's, we have the land for that, we have
Completed design drawings, we have a referendum approving a $3 million borrowing.
yeah,
We've gotten some monies from emergency management DCs for some of their grants for some of the
EOC stuff.
EOC stuff, tables and chairs and things that we can use, for the functioning of it.
So did that borrowing go to referendum, or was
Yeah.
that?
Yes.
Okay, what was alternative approval,
No,
and
we
what
decided
went with the election?
No,
No,
it's
we did
separate,
it
separate.
before, yeah. We had a few little procedural hiccups, losing the CFO and having to find a new one and getting the architect on board and things like that. So we're a little behind in our time.
So land is there, and design is complete?
Yeah.
design, just preliminary design, so.
Wow, it's pretty complete.
It's preliminary.
Oh,
Not at all.
can always trust Allison.
She can find it, it's there.
Or the reverse.
Trying to find the steps that these are all individual reviews. Medical clinic would go right there.
Yeah.
We'd be able to drive the ambulance through to get into the ambulance bay, the medical clinic there. Ways, Office of New and Emergency Training, Emergency
EOC,
Operations
yeah.
Training,
Cool.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's coming to council at the next council meeting, and to sort of move that ahead to the
Working
next step.
drawings.
Yeah, get some working drawings out of that.
Okay.
So those are our major capital expenses.
So that's fully funded then?
Well,
I
yes,
hope so.
yeah, we sure hope so.
You never know until you go to tender.
Right, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, we've got a good contingency.
Crown lands and logging. David, do you want to say anything about that part of the
Sure,
show?
yeah, a couple of things. So, first of all, you're familiar, of course, about a year and a half ago, proposal of these timber sales to log a considerable portion of our town lands. As a group on the island got pretty concerned about that. And,
Well, the whole island did.
well, yeah, the whole island,
Absolutely.
the council was unanimous. There was clear opposition, and so they pulled back their idea. But they're still concerned that, this could come back. And so there have been a few initiatives to try to prevent this from coming back, and one was the group, Defend Island Forest, produced that 30-odd page document, which we gave to you a year or so ago, and you, I know, presented to the House, which was great. But there's still some other, but we still haven't, got anywhere where we need to go. We've also approached Metro Vancouver to see if they're interested in acquiring the land as an expansion of Clifton Park. And one of the things that I was looking at, and I wanted to ask you about, is the process called the Crown Land and Nominal Rent 10-year sponsorship. The transfer of Crown lands to municipalities. Yeah. And I looked through the application form. It looked pretty straightforward for the kinds of things that, the analysis that we could provide to support that. But any thoughts about that process? You have to get sponsorship from somebody. I presume that will be
Ministry.
yeah, from a minister. I presume that would be Parks, if we're looking at transferring the land into Park. And Maureen's going to have it.
Maybe I could just speak to that. It's Flinroe that
It would be at
is
Flinroe,
dealing
would
with
have
the
to-
policy issues.
Well, my understanding was the application would go to Flinroe.
The person in Flinroe who would deal with this initially is Duncan Williams. And he got in touch with us in part in response to the meeting that we had with Minister Donaldson during UBCM. So Mr. Williams was given the job of following up, and he would be the person that would provide us with some guidance. The caution that he gave to me and to Sue Ellen was that generally what he's dealing with is something that would be on a much smaller scale than what we were thinking about as far as Crown lands were concerned. The other reason that this is on the agenda is that you had expressed interest at UBCM and possibly having some sort of public event on Bowen to talk about the future of the Crown lands. And I was curious about whether that was something that you might still be interested in pursuing.
With regard to the Crown, the nominal rent 10 years, yes, generally speaking, Flinroe would manage those tenures and would process them. I think you're right that there does require a sponsor from some entity. But I don't know a lot about these other than they generally, as Councillor Nicholson mentioned, are around things like if you want to put a water treatment plant or
An infrastructure issue.
yeah, and then that becomes
That's what we
available.
did for Mannion Bay. We talked about
Yeah.
it. Okay.
So, whether this would be applicable for the Crown land on Bowen overall, it's worth investigating. It's hard to say whether that would be something that government would support or not, but I'm certainly willing to look into that and see what kind of willingness there is to consider it. I would like to just make sure that we are clear that that it was actually, it wasn't an intention to log 23% of Bowen Island. It was to create a forest stewardship plan. And a forest stewardship plan can be a lot of different things. And so I have to admit, I was concerned originally by some of the presentation of what was proposed or considered. I saw the maps that showed, well, it's the same sort of deal we looked at on Gambier, where it's like they're gonna clear cut 2/3 of Gambier.
Yeah.
That was never anybody's intention. So,
The numbers, if I remember correctly, were 8,000 cubic meters.
no, because that was potential, I suppose there was that potential, but at the end of the day, you don't know, you can't come up with that number until you have a forest stewardship plan. And so, when I looked at the Crown land on Bowen Island, and then I looked at the constraints on that crown land. So you might have had 23% or something like that was crown. And then the constraints on that are things like watersheds, on drainages, on certain wildlife habitat, on old growth polygons, and on visual quality assessments. All of that comes off of that 23%. And so, and then from that, from whatever's left over, and it might be very little, I don't know, you don't know until you really run through the process. Then of that, generally speaking, it's a 80-year cycle. So you take the total or the total amount of growth each year and harvest a percentage that equates to a sustainable harvest over an 80-year period. So, and I'm not saying I'm not necessarily advocating for that approach. I'm just saying that's how these forest stewardship plans work. And I don't like, I'm uncomfortable when people suggest that it would be, they come in here, clear cut 23% Bowen Island and leave. Because I don't think that was ever anybody's intention. And I think there's ways to look at a forest stewardship plan that can provide value as well. So I don't really have a significant opposition to developing a forest stewardship plan, because that could mean, that plan could mean no cutting at all. That plan could mean dealing with wildfire. That plan could mean, could mean with commercial logging. It could mean a variety of things, but you never really know until you go through the plan. Now that said, there was clearly opposition to any harvesting on Bowen Island. I even at one point proposed that, I thought, well, Bowen does consume some wood on an annual basis. It would be kind of interesting to look at Bowen and say, what do we consume on the island on an annual basis in terms of construction and in terms of heating and whatever other uses there are for wood. And saying, if we truly want to be a sustainable community, should we think about harvesting what we need on the island? It's the kind of thing you want to, I think, you want to really consider some of these things. Now, again, that suggestion was not particularly well received. Yet Bowen and the crown land on Bowen remains within the annual allowable cut and the annual allowable cut calculation for this region. And the concern or the problem I have is that this, if it's not cut here and there is a mandate by Forest Lands and Natural Resource Operations and Rural Development to harvest the AAC, the annual allowable cut, and they're nowhere near harvesting the AAC on the coast, from what I understand. But nonetheless, in certain subregions, if the managers are going to get to their targets, they have to harvest somewhere. And that means that if we're going to leave Bowen's AAC within that region, then it's not going to be harvested here, then it's going to be harvested somewhere else. And that just really transfers the issue to somebody else. And so I don't think that's equitable, and that's why I supported the idea that if we're never going to harvest on Bowen, then take it out, because it's not fair to just transfer that obligation to somebody else.
I very much appreciate that was the position that you took, and I would certainly be supportive of that. I mean, our general sense from the people we talked to at the time and discussions later is that Bowen serves an important role in the region as, the old, it was part of the green zone as it used to be described.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And it's really an important role to protect a significant portion of Metro Vancouver, of our region, for people to protect nature and for people to experience nature. Crippen Park has a valuable role in doing that, and a lot of the people who come into Crippen Park head right up Mount Gardner anyway. And so it's sort of natural to keep that as part part of the system for the region. Anyway, that's a position that we've taken, and certainly, you know, we've approached Metro Vancouver about that, and we'll just see how it goes. But we'd like to do what we can to help move that forward.
Yeah, sorry, answer
Do
that.
you know if they, my understanding is they've done a timber cruise, but do you know if they have or have seen it?
Sorry, I've seen what?
A cruise? Give
You
me
mean
an
the-
idea
you
what's
mean
up there.
Oh,
Timber
The
cruise.
data?
A timber cruise, what's the value, what kind of timber's up there and the value of it?
not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay.
And do they take practicality into it at all? I mean, I don't think it's the best place to log, I don't think we're very efficient.
Well, I think you'd have to look at the quality of the
The market.
wood,
Oh,
fiber,
everything, yeah.
and the market and other things, yeah, yeah. So I think the next steps, we did, I've talked to Minister Donaldson on numerous occasions about this, including the meetings we had with staff at UBCM, and I've talked to him in the House on a number of occasions about this exact issue. He is aware of it, and we have, I asked him some specific questions about mechanisms to pull Bowen out of the AAC, and I have not at this point received any response with regard to the practicality of any one of those particular initiatives, but he took it under advisement, and I think his concern would likely be that if we do this on Bowen, what does this mean otherwise? You know, what other community is, who's next? Yeah, that issue of precedence,
Yeah.
yes.
Sorry, Sal, go
I
ahead.
have a question about, with all the wildfires and just forestry generally, with all the wildfires in the past few years and the concerns about forest practices, isn't there some kind of, maybe you could advise us, is there some kind of review of forest practices or some kind, aren't they contemplating some changes to the way forestry is managed province-wide? I thought there was something going on.
There's a couple of initiatives. One would be the professional reliance review
Yeah.
and the updates to the legislation that took place in the fall.
Yeah,
The regulations have not been produced at this particular time, so
yeah, no,
That
that's not what
does-
I was thinking about. I thought it was,
that's one
Forest
aspect of it.
Stewardship Council? Yeah.
And then there is certainly a desire to ensure maximum utilization of fiber out of the forest land base. So that would, I think that really means trying to maximize the fiber utilization, is exactly what it says. So leaving less waste in the forest is one of the primary considerations.
Okay, I think that's the one I was confused about, is I didn't understand what it meant. Use maximum fiber sounds like, let's go cut everything.
Yes.
I just
Nice
wanted to
way
be
to say
clear
it.
on what
Clear,
what
yeah,
it was,
no.
what it was for.
I think what they're looking for is, at this point, up until now, perhaps tops under 6 inches would be left out there and burned. Is that the best use of that fiber? Could that fiber be used for pulping? Could that fiber be used for biochar? Could that fiber be used for other uses in the long run? And so you have a better, perhaps you have a better way of recapturing that carbon or resequestering it. And are there other value-added products that you can generate out of that same fiber? Because otherwise you're just simply piling it and burning it or
Right,
piling it.
and the slash, and it dries up over the years.
Yeah, exactly.
I think what I'm thinking about is the wildfire-related things to do with, would they continue requiring that alder be sprayed with herbicides, for
Like-
example, and other kinds of things that might be natural wildfire breaks.
Mhm.
I just thought they were looking at more of those different changes, and I thought there was a public comment period or something, but if it's okay, I can look it up.
And the glyphosate application, we did look into that in our office, and the understanding is that is really not something that's utilized in the south at all. It's, for the most part, it's used up north, and there's a review of those processes, because some of data is new. Some of the ideas around the wildfire breaks as a result of deciduous forest is something that hadn't been considered because it wasn't a species that was desirable from a forest sector
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah, no, that's
So,
fine.
but there's other
That's
values
helpful.
there that maybe, that sometimes get missed, and I think it's a review of that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Any, Maureen?
Just this Friday, Councillor Morris and I are participating in a webinar that Glenrose is hosting, and they titled it The Fraser Valley and Sea to Sky Corridor Coastal Forest Sector Overview of Communities' Interests and Opportunities Ahead. So they're getting the ball rolling with giving new councils an introduction to what forestry is all about, what that ministry is all about, and then a chance for us to say something about the role of forestry or not in our particular communities. So I think that might be quite helpful.
And I'm sorry, Maureen, I didn't answer the other part of your question.
Yeah.
And I'm certainly more than happy to enter into a public dialogue or process around what the future of Crown lands on Bowen will look like.
So
And,
how would we get to there? How would
well,
we-
I think that's something that we should talk about. I
Yeah.
think that it's something that we should work on together
Yeah.
as a community, as a council, as your provincial representative. So I think with our office, we can maybe.
Yep.
Or if you have some ideas about how that, you might want to see that work and the timing on it, then absolutely, I'm happy to do that discussion.
One of the biggest things, which I remember when we were talking about, when we were redoing, initially incorporated about trying to acquire it or get the tenure, for example, is once you've got the tenure, you're responsible for looking after it.
Correct.
And the water buffer is kind of expensive.
Well, as long as it's in the timber harvesting land base, I think that the Forest Lands and Natural Resource Operation still
But
has
if
a
we had a crown
wildfire.
tenure on it, it would
Potentially,
be in
that would
the.
be one of the implications you need to
Yeah,
understand.
yeah, exactly, it's just
Good
what's the
responsibility
ongoing
as well.
cost and responsibility.
Yeah, and certainly wildfire branch would respond, but you might get billed.
Bill, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, from a fire perspective, I mean, you look at it, and if we were gonna do anything for a fire cutting, I just don't think it's efficient on the island. There's just too much timber here. And we can do what we can around our houses and that sort of thing, but as far as fire breaks and cleaning the forest, I don't think it's gonna work. That would be my thought anyway, it's just
Well,
massive undertaking.
True, although Whistler is undertaking
They are,
a
yeah.
very similar process,
Yeah.
and Squamish is looking at protecting some of their neighborhoods as well, so, and that doesn't.
So this is in the urban interface, not so
Yes.
much, oh, okay,
Yeah.
it's not in the wild.
No.
Okay, that's, yeah, no, that's a different thing
Yeah,
altogether.
yeah.
Part of the fire smart operation, eh?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's very expensive also.
No, and that's one of the things that can be incorporated into a port stewardship plan.
I have a related question, it's not on our agenda here, but it relates to the Water Act, our new Sustainable Water Act. And in there, I think that there's an opportunity for communities that are concerned about changes in water, especially with climate change and whether we have enough water with longer, drier summers, making some kind of water stewardship plan. And my question is, has any other community made a water stewardship plan under the new act yet? And also, would that be something that would be taken into consideration when logging is being proposed or planned, or in a forest stewardship, or whatever that's called, forest stewardship plan?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. That's one of the constraints when you look at the timber harvesting land base is water sources, water drainages, aquifers.
Yeah, yeah, I knew that watersheds, water drainages were a constraint, but I'm specifically asking about this watershed stewardship plan that I understand is something that you can do under the new Water Sustainability Act. And I'm just wondering if you know of anybody who's done one yet?
No.
Because it's all new.
Yeah, no, I don't. Although when every time a aquifer is accessed to create a municipal water source, then the Ministry of the Environment does require that that aquifer is assessed and understood, so how does it recharge, where does the water come from, what's the future look like?
They registered too.
Yeah, registered, exactly.
Well, wells have to be registered.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so, and that's extending to other users, but not private users.
Yeah,
So there's 60,000 wells, I believe, in British Columbia that will not need to register because they are residential in nature.
yeah.
The rest of them, so that's commercial, industrial, institutional, including agriculture.
And bed and breakfast.
I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
if it's a business, if it's commercial, then it requires that there be
Yeah.
a registration and an understanding. And the reason for that is so you can really begin to better understand that whole aquifer in its entirety. Now, there's been some a lack of uptake to some degree for registration.
Yeah.
I think they're way quite behind in terms of getting people to register.
Yeah, I
They've
understand
extended
there's
it.
a deadline.
Which has been extended, but it's still looming. I
Yeah.
think it's this fall, I think.
Okay.
I would want to
Okay, I had
quote me on
March,
that.
March date. That's not March?
I'm not sure.
Okay,
We'll-
well, we
we'll,
can check. Yeah,
The registration date, we'll find that
okay.
out.
It's a mammoth project.
Yes.
To get out there.
Now, interestingly, where it hasn't progressed to the point where we're at a place that the higher level objectives have been able to be achieved. And part of that is ultimately generating some revenue so we can understand drainages overall. Because yes, a lot of people can register that they're, pulling water here, pulling water there, but we need to understand what's happening in the whole as a cumulative effect on a drainage. And that requires funding, and it requires some significant assessments and some technical work.
Well,
And so, but at this point, from what I can see, it looks like it's really just cost recovery in terms of the registration fees
Yeah.
to cover the cost of actually administering the
Yeah.
registrations and that sort of thing. So there isn't at this point a fund
no, I wasn't really
available.
asking about funding. I just think as an island, we're basically a bubble of fresh
Susceptible,
water
yeah.
with what comes down from the sky, and seeps into the cracks and everything, right?